Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Kidney Coach YouTube channel. I am naturopath Fiona Chin and co-creator of the Kidney Disease Solution and part of the Cogenesis formulation team and owner. And I'm joined today by the wonderful, beautiful Dr. Carla Stanton. Carla is, well, she's a good friend of mine. We met doing some Dr. Joe work, but she's a functional family medicine practitioner. She is also part of the research team for Dr. Joe Dispenza. So she works with the team making and collecting all the data from all those amazing events that he does. She's also our head of research for Kidney Coach and Cogenesis. So she's the one checking in with all our patients and looking over EGFRs and blood tests and seeing how everyone's going. She's also the, now tell me if I get this right, Carla, you are the director of HeartMath UK.
Medical director of HeartMath UK, yeah.
Did I get that one right?
Yeah, medical director. And so there's sections, but mostly in the UK, I'm assisting with that.
Perfect. And you're a HeartMath practitioner, consultant, all of those sort of things that go along with that. And then the other amazing thing that Carla's doing at the moment is she's working with medical practitioners, be it psychologists, GPs, whatever that is, and helping them to cope with stress and actually be more relaxed, embodied, healthy, happy practitioners so they can better then service their patients, which I think is really amazing. So thank you so much for joining me today, Carla. I'm really excited to have you on board and chat to our community.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to delve into what we're going to do today.
Yeah, so we thought we'd talk about heart coherence and actually what that is and why that's important to health and regulating stress. So one of the things we talk a lot about in the Kidney Disease Solution, it's great to, alkalize and take all your supplements and all of those sort of things, but that can be quite redundant if you're in a chronic state of stress and in fight or flight, which we'll get into, because being stressed all the time is highly acidic. We know that alkalizing is really important to kidney health. And we know that if you're stressed all the time and producing epinephrine and norepinephrine and cortisol and all of those sort of things, it makes it a lot harder for the body to heal and have available energy for healing. And one of the things, as I understand it, and I'll get you to explain it because you know much more than I do, is that heart coherence and being able to self-regulate your internal stressful states is a really great way of switching off that stress response and coming more to your center, I guess, for a better way. So, yeah. So why don't we start with what is heart coherence? What am I even talking about? What does that even mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So it turns out that the heart is really an important, it's kind of like the linchpin, I kind of think of it as between the brain and the body. It kind of ties everything together. And when we look at your heart, we can really see it's a window into the autonomic nervous system real time. We can see really what's going on behind the scenes, under the hood of us, see how well the body is functioning. So the way your heart beats moment to moment is a real-time reflection of your physiology, of how it's working, how much order, how much homeostasis, or how much disorder or dis-ease or stress is going on in the body. And it's this constant state of flux. So when we can create something called heart coherence, what's been sort of shown in all the research over 20 plus years, is that when your heart is beating in a certain rhythm, a certain pattern, what we call coherence, that actually induces optimal physiological performance. It takes us out of that stress, that incoherence, into more of like a homeostasis, order, and that allows all those 50 plus trillion cells in your body to optimize much more functionally. So the way it works is like this. We used to think the heart, beats like a metronome, like steady state, but actually it's not. Your heart is like, it's listening all the time. It's paying attention to what's going on in the body, and it's adjusting your rate of your heart depending on whether, do I need to run, do I need to fight, or can I relax and be? And so the rhythm is always changing. So it's either speeding up or slowing down, speeding up or slowing down. And we might call that heart rate variability. So people often wear, we often wear these wearables, and we talk about how's your heart rate variability.
You've got one on your finger now, don't you?
Yeah, I've got my Oura ring. So these are really, really helpful tools to look at like how much variation is going on in the heart rate. Turns out that, a really healthy system means that our heart can speed up when it needs to speed up. So when we need to run for that bus or run away from that lion or whatever, we need that. We need stress. There's some good stress that we need, but we also need to recover. Our heart rate needs to be able to slow down, like when we sleep, like when, you know, we digest our food. So we need both. So we need our heart to speed up a lot, and we need it to be able to slow down a lot when it's appropriate. So that's what we call heart rate variability. And the more variation you have, the more energy you have in your system, the more capacity you have in your system. And so heart rate variability is a marker of health. Like it typically reduces between 2 to 5% per year. So it's a marker of age. It's also,
wow.
yeah, it's a marker of resilience. And we know that, you know, when we're stressed, our heart rate variability goes down. So they're really important. And it's just basically a marker of energy. But there's also another really important factor, which is coherence. So it's not only the extent to which it speeds up and slows down, but also the rhythm, the pattern that emerges when it does that. Does it do it in an orderly fashion? Speeds up, slows down, speeds up, slow down, nice and orderly? Or is it speeding up, slowing down, and doing it in a really jagged way? It's kind of like driving your car with the accelerator and the brake at the same time. And that's the state of stress. And it kind of feels like that, doesn't it? It feels exhausting on the system. So coherence is a way of creating order in the body, and we know that has so many positive health outcomes for those who have more coherently beating hearts. So we know that it's improves not only your stress levels and well-being, your perception of your life, but also physiological markers like HRV over time, like, you know, your glucose regulation capacity, lots of things. But it's also been linked to specific disease as well, heart disease, lung disease. So yeah, it's really good for creating order. But the beautiful thing is that heart rate variability and coherence can be improved. We can change it. It's not that we just have to sit back and wait for us to get old and know that our heart rate variability is going to go lower. No, there's some really beautiful, amazing things that we can do to improve our heart rate variability and our coherence. So yeah, I know I've kind of touched on both things there, and they're both really important. And heart rate variability, we know dietary things associated with heart rate variability decreasing, you know, inflammatory foods can reduce your HRV. Movement is really important for HRV. So, you know, doing some exercise is really important, the way we breathe too. But we know with coherence, the way to create great coherence is particularly influenced by the way we breathe and the way we feel moment to moment. So we can actually entrain a different signature of coherence with the right tools, really simple tools that anyone can use anywhere, anytime. And actually the evidence just shows that just 5 minutes twice a day is enough over just 2 months to change someone's HRV and coherence. So it doesn't actually take a lot to do.
So, and that change, and we'll go through some practices later, but if you're practicing that and doing that, does that stick? So that's something that when you can entrain that, then the heart actually gets a new baseline or set, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. So they've done studies on, they did a great study on children, and they had them go over this process over 4 months, but they've shown it in 2 months. But they had a group of kids, and they just measured their heart rhythms moment to moment over like 5 minutes. They didn't have to do anything. They just sat there and they just took these baseline measurements. So that's what's normally going on in the background. And they did that at the beginning of the 4-month study. And then they asked them to do these heart coherence practices, one of which we're going to show you at the end of this session. And they just had to do it for 5 minutes twice a day. Okay. And they also measured their, at the end of this 4 months, their anxiety scores. So how anxious they were, as well as they measured their test results. So they did an exam again at the end, because, you know, a lot of kids get anxious around sort of performing. So they used in this study 2 kids which were very representative of the collective. And what was really interesting is that when they took their baseline at the end, they were just told to sit there like they're waiting for a bus. They're not actually practicing the method. They're just sitting there, but their heart rate variability massively went up. So technically they're younger, right? Technically their physiology is younger than it was 4 months prior.
Wow.
Their coherence was remarkable. So they're way more coherent, and their anxiety scores went down so that they weren't as anxious, and their test scores went up. So that was in just 4 months of 5 minutes twice a day. But actually, A lot of the research shows that just two months can make that shift. So it just means that your capacity, when the inevitable stress comes, which, you know, we know life is challenging, you'll just have more capacity to deal with it. It's kind of, I think of it as like training a muscle, that we just have to do a little bit every day. You know, going to the gym for 1 hour once a week is going to be painful, and it's not going to help us long term. Just by doing 5 minutes is going to help really to support that and just keep that baseline, keep you ticking over. So yeah.
Right. And I know lots of people ask, so that study was based on children. Obviously, it works as we get older as well. So it's not just children. As we get older, we can still have the same sort of results.
Absolutely. Yeah. They've done, the Heart Math Institute have been amazing. That, you know, they've got so much peer-reviewed research over the last 26 years, over 300 peer-reviewed articles around this. And they've done all sorts of cohorts, including those that are more elderly as well, different sorts of professions, physicians, police, really stressed and usually quite unhealthy professions. So yeah, it works across all ages and across all different cultures and you know, groups of people and sexes. So yeah, this works for everyone. Yeah. And
amazing.
Anecdotally, so my father, when he was in his 70s, I taught him these techniques, and his HRV and coherence, just by doing, he really got into, started doing 20 minutes once a day, but that vastly improved, and he felt much better. Like he'd always been like a biter of his nails, very kind of anxious, and he just stopped biting his nails, and he felt much calmer and more centered. So it's possible for anyone.
Amazing. And just so people understand, run us through the biochemistry of fight or flight stress and being incoherent, and what that means for the physiology of a person when they're coherent. Because obviously a lot of people with kidney disease have heart disease first, and you touched on blood sugar and diabetes. They're the two greatest causes of kidney disease, chronic kidney disease in the world. So just walk us through how physiologically the body changes when we can regulate our coherence and improve that.
Yeah. Okay. So we all live in these, a lot of us are taught that we live in these two physiological states. Okay. That the nervous system either lives in a state of fight or flight, go, stress, or it lives in a state of relaxation, rest and digest, feed and breathe. And we might call that sympathetic in the medical world and parasympathetic. Okay. And so I kind of equate these to like muscles on our biceps, right? Actually, in health, a lot of us think like stress is bad, relaxation good, right? But it's actually doesn't work like that in health. It's way more kind of complicated in a way, but it kind of makes sense if I walk you through it. So if like this is my muscle of stress and this is my muscle of relaxation, in health, I should be able to have a bit of healthy stress. We all need a bit of challenge to perform, right? So I should be working this muscle, but I should also be working my muscle of relaxation as well. So this is health. We're doing both. Okay. So maybe I have a bit of challenge, but I also can relax at the end of the day. The challenge is, for most of us, the problem with a lot of dis-ease that happens is that we overwork this muscle. Like we don't know how to move into relaxation. So we go. There's always so much overwhelm in the world that we particularly live in. So we're overworking this muscle. And whenever you overtrain any muscle, you get fatigue, right? You get breakdown, you get dysfunction. So we lose energy. That's where we get that fatigue, that burnout, that slump, that, chronic adrenal insufficiency. But also we're not actually none of us have been taught how to work up this muscle. So we might go to this one. They're like, well, I can't relax. I don't know how to relax. And this is week 2. So we need to kind of have both of them working. And actually it turns out coherence is this area where they're both working at the same time. So some people will do relaxation techniques, which is really important. But for those of us who need to still do things, we want to be creative, we want to perform. Actually, if you're really relaxed, you just don't want to do anything. You just lie back and go to sleep, right? So we want to find the sweet spot, the bliss point. As it turns out, there is a range which is physiologically measurable, which is coherence, which is where this sympathetic and parasympathetic is merging. It's like a dance. So it's sympathetic, parasympathetic. And that's when you breathe in, your heart speeds up, and when you breathe out, your heart slows down. So it's this constant interplay, so that it's more like a unified way of being. And so if we can start to just move away from this dominant go, this is the realm of doing, and this is the realm of being, instead of like do and just being and not doing anything. It's like a do, right? It's a balance. Okay, so that's a helpful way to kind of remember it. So it's from a sort of physiological point of view. So this is like adrenaline, cortisol, but it's really physiological disorder. You're getting surges in cortisol, and then you get a slump of cortisol. It's extremes. It's really about the optimal balance, and this is this bliss point of coherence that we're trying to generate, and by simple practices. And we know that emotionality, when you feel, that's a chemical that you're experiencing the effects of, and we actually produce a lot of these really positive, nourishing chemicals in our heart. Our heart, we used to think, was a pump, and actually in 1983 it was reclassified as an endocrine gland. It produces 50% of our oxytocin, dopamine, lots of really AMP, lots of really important chemicals which affect how we feel and how we function. And so when we can begin to feel more positive, rejuvenating emotions, that automatically creates more order in the system. It stops these huge shoots of cortisol and adrenaline, and actually creates more of an optimal level, a healthy level of those. And we actually, it feels, when we feel good, we feel more ordered, more balanced, more centered. I mean, it's naturally, we know that, like that barometer, it knows. And that's because our heart is beating in a coherent way. It's informing the brain, and it really influences how we think and how we feel moment to moment, depending on how our heart is functioning, how our body is working. Does that make sense? That how I think
it does. And it's funny you say, I'm going to get you to touch on this, is, one of the things that I know I was taught is the three brains. We've got the brain, the heart brain, and the gut brain. Right. And so the heart, as I understand it, is it actually sends messages up to the brain first. So the heart feels before the brain reacts. Is that right?
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, we used to think that the brain had dominion over the body, but actually, the research of the last 20 plus years is that it's kind of the other way around, that the body's mostly informing the brain. And we have all this ascending information, particularly that vagus nerve, which is kind of, we think of it as the relaxation response, but actually it does both. It regulates both activity and relaxation, and it's the longest nerve in the body, and it touches all organs in our body. And so this vagus nerve, we know that like from the gut, 90% is traveling upwards, and from the heart, 80% is traveling upwards. So there's only 20% going down. So most of the information is ascending to influence how we think and how we feel in moment to moment. It's just that most of us aren't consciously aware of this. And so just by simply becoming aware, by becoming aware of how you're feeling when you eat certain foods, tuning into it, using the power of your awareness, and actually starting to create a relationship with your body and work together rather than against, you can create a beautiful harmony where you're kind of, building up this kind of virtuous circle rather than that kind of vicious circle of you're kind of fighting against. So yeah, it's a really beautiful, powerful thing. And we often talk, don't we, about like, I feel it in my gut, or I feel it in my heart. We know these ancient wisdoms that have been with us for thousands of years. Like there's a reason for that the science is just kind of catching up with, that we have these mini brains throughout our body, which is informing us. It's an intelligence, and it's creating order locally. So if we can start to pay attention to it and work with it, that's really exciting, and it's empowering, because it means that we can take more control over our health and work with our body. Yeah, I love that kind of journey.
I do too. Now, I want you just to go back, because you mentioned some great hormones, and I just want people to really understand why it's so important and why heart coherence is so important. So you mentioned oxytocin, dopamine, and AMP. So tell me, if someone was saying, okay, well, why is that important? If I create more oxytocin, what is that? And dopamine and AMP, what effect is that going to have on my overall physiology and health? And why would I want to do that? So, I mean, Walk us through that for people that don't know what oxytocin, dopamine, and AMP do.
Yeah, absolutely. So most of us have probably experienced that feeling of oxytocin. So it's kind of a hormone of bonding. You know, typically it's when women give birth and they bond with their child through breastfeeding, but actually we produce it in part of social bonding as well. So, you know, the classic thing is the honeymoon effect. When you first fall in love with somebody, we've all had that kind of, many of us have had that rush of love that just feels incredible. It's incredibly rejuvenating, you know, particularly you can kind of look back in your first loves, like you don't need any sleep, nothing bothers you, don't see anything. So it's really resilient. You suddenly like, it's just water off a duck's back. You don't care about other stuff. So it actually makes you incredibly resilient because you just love. And that's really who we are, right? That at our core. And so we just get these huge surges. But when you can start to kind of regulate it so that it's kind of you're more working with your body, we produce 50% of that in our heart, and it's an incredibly nourishing, resilient forming chemical which helps us bond. You know, we're wired for connection. That's why we're here. And so it's a really beautiful healing hormone which creates order in the system. And so that's kind of the oxytocin, and dopamine is kind of thought about that sort of neurotransmitter of kind of reward. And so most of us, it's that dopamine. We talk about dopamine hits. So when your phone pings and you're like, oh, who sent me a message? Those little pings that we get throughout the day, they're little rewards. But actually it turns out that we can make dopamine ourselves. And so wouldn't it be incredible if we weren't so reliant on the external things in our life to reward us, to make us feel good? Simply by tuning in, we can create rewards ourselves. We can feel really good and loved just by becoming aware of this mini brain that exists within our heart. So and the ANP piece, so that's really to do with it's really to do with optimization of actually influences behavior as well. So we know that people with ANP, they're more connected. It influences how they interact with people, influences your blood pressure. So that's really important for people with kidney disease. So it's to do with the fluid regulations within the body. And so when you can get that optimal, then your blood pressure is better regulated. So it's a really, really important chemical to kind of optimize. And just by paying attention to your heart and creating coherence, that can create more order within the levels of that. So
great. So what I'm hearing, just to sum that up, is increasing oxytocin, dopamine, and AMP are all going to have hugely beneficial effects on just how our body functions, reducing stress, obviously feeling more connected and love. Just in itself, when you think about that and connect to it, you can't really feel stressed at the same time. So switching off then all those stress hormones and switching on more of these hormones. And not only do they make us love and feel more connected, but they're also very healing and have all these other things that, you know, regulate heart and blood pressure, which of course is then going to have a big on-flow effect to how the kidneys function and all of those sort of things. So, and apart from lowering stress, you're going to feel better. You're going to enjoy life more because you're feeling more connected and love and not angry and all of those sort of things that don't really serve us as humans and just feed into that stress pathway, but make us feel more connected and purposeful while we're here.
Absolutely. And, you know, like all these emotions, they serve a purpose. There's going to be a time when it's necessary for me to be angry or necessary for me to be sad. And that's just the rich tapestry of life, right? And so, but it's about how do we create balance so that we're not staying there? We need some way to navigate out of that, so that our baseline isn't one of extreme stress or extreme hopelessness. And just with some simple techniques of creating these chemicals in our body will influence how we feel and how we think. And so, yeah, it's kind of exciting that you can become your own pharmacist just by where you kind of place your awareness and attention, and by bringing up emotions. It's a practice. It's kind of like building this muscle just by rehearsing and practicing where you place your attention and what you feel will actually nourish yourself from the inside. So, yeah.
Amazing. I know there's my puppy sitting right here. He so wants to jump on my lap. There's oxytocin. He produces, they say when you come home and your dog sees you, they produce oxytocin. So I think he's just come out to say hello with his little teddy to produce oxytocin for everybody. So, all right. So I think then why don't we jump into, unless there's anything else I haven't, that you wanted to cover or I haven't asked you, should we jump into some techniques for people to use to actually be able to do this?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, let's do it. So the first thing to, and by the way, they've done studies with doggies and heart coherence.
Have they?
Yeah, and horses as well. And like,
I've seen the horse studies. Yeah.
Incredible how it's this non-verbal communication, and it's been shown that if you go into coherence, your dog goes into coherence, and vice versa. So it's like a beautiful communication that not only how you feel will help you feel better, but actually influences those around you. And you can't placebo a doggy, you can't trick it. Like, you put the heart on it and heart measurement on it, and you'll see it heart rhythm changing. So he's just feeling your love. So I love
I know, it's amazing. Well, I mean, Carla and I meditate together every Monday, and he's always, by the time I've come out of my meditation, he's lying on my lap snoring. And Ruby was the same, like, you'd meditate, she'd come there. But because being a horse rider, if I was ever stressed, my horse wouldn't come anywhere near me. And then when you ride, I just saw this great diagram on actually Dr. Joe's page the other day, and it was horses. And one of the reasons horses, they use them in so many therapies and things like that, have the ability to override your coherence and bring you into a coherent state, which I just find amazing. And horses seem to know that they've got that ability, and they know how to almost regulate a human state, which there's just so much we don't know, and I just find that stuff so fascinating. But yeah, sorry, I digress, but I just love that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I know they did a study where they took people from a care home, and they just had them be near horses, and they looked at their heart rhythms. And yeah, as you say, they thought it might be the other way around, but the horses, just by being in their presence, their heart rhythms shifted into more coherence and more energy in the system, a frequency called VLF, which is really important for health. So just by being in their presence, but also their cognitive function improved just by being in their presence. So this is the power of the heart. And they got massive hearts compared to ours. So, and you can feel it. And it's just, yeah, it's really amazing how powerful our bodies are at communicating and influencing us. So yeah.
Yeah, I do too. All right. So if someone's sitting at home and they're going, okay, Dr. Carla, great. How do I get more heart rate variability, and how do I get my heart more coherent? What do I do?
Okay. So it's like, from the heart rate variability point of view, just simple lifestyle measures, everything that's in your book will improve your heart rate variability, I've no doubt. Simple things that nourish you. But the things that will help in the moment quickly is the breath, movement. So movement and then emotion was the quickest way to do it instantaneously. And so we'll just start with the breath. And so most of us are living in this fight or flight most of the time. Like, we don't really, or do, go. And over time, that can affect the patterns in which we breathe. We're unconsciously aware of it. But many of us, and I see this in many of my patients that come in the room, we're dysfunctional breathers. We've just stayed in this fight or flight so long that we breathe in a different way. And that vagus nerve that I talked about is kind of disengaged. And so we'll just connect with how we're breathing for a moment, just to observe it and just bring some awareness to it. Because if you're sort of new to these practices, it's really helpful. And so what I often talk through with my patients is just simply by placing a hand on the top of your chest, just one hand with your hands, and then the other one just put on your belly, over your belly button. And you don't need to do anything. Just, I invite you just to, you can close your eyes if it's easier, just to start to pay attention to your breath. And you may just become aware of the rise and fall of your hands. And just see if there's any particular area, one hand, that's moving more than the other.
Yeah, definitely my upper hand.
Okay, all right. So in order to activate the vagus nerve more, if we can engage that diaphragm, which really activates the belly, that's a really great way to create more activation of that relaxation response, to get both of them going. Both of them is really important. But if you can, bring some more breath into the belly. So you're breathing a little deeper, and slower than you normally do. And you're kind of drawing your belly away from your spine a little bit more. And what I find is that there seems to be like a rhythm. So if I take a nice deep breath in, sometimes my belly moves out first and then my chest. You can kind of get this cadence going, the belly and the upper chest. And sometimes this can feel really strange to people, like if we've not even been aware of our belly breathing. And by the way, we've been talking, so you're probably more likely to be breathing up here than into your belly. But when we're doing these practices, so just to bring some awareness into the belly and then the chest. So this is just stage one, being aware of bringing more, breathing deeper and slower and where we're breathing from. Okay, so then the next stage is bringing some regularity to the breathing. So the research has shown there's many different amazing ways to activate the breath, to use the breath to change our physiological states. But for coherence, for that divine kind of balance of rest and digest and feed and breathe, that dance, what we want is we want equal activity of both, which means we breathe in for 5 and we breathe out for 5, and it's smooth and steady. So that's called resonant frequency breathing.
Okay.
So if you can, from this place, and I'll count for us. So if you begin to take your breath in and you count in for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and out for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and in for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and out for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just continue there, slow and steady, seeing if you can breathe a little deeper each time. And already from this place, this is creating coherence just through this movement alone. So just whenever you're stressed, sometimes when you're in extreme stress, it's hard to just pull yourself out of it. So just by watching your breathing alone and bringing coherence, bringing an active breath, 5 in, 5 out, creates coherence. It neutralizes whatever's going on. It brings you back to baseline. For the next level of practice, it's adding an emotion to it, a positive, rejuvenating emotion. So we can do that. Often we feel most powerfully through our hearts. So this is kind of like the training wheels, what we've just done there with putting the hands on the upper chest and the belly. That's kind of a training wheels exercise of like, where am I breathing? Where can I bring awareness to? That's a great place to just check in. But when we want to really create coherence, what we can simply do is just by placing just a hand or a light touch, or simply your awareness to the chest area where we feel most powerfully. You're also welcome to keep a hand on your belly if you wish, but sometimes it's easy just to place all your attention on your heart. And again, begin to breathe a little deeper and a little slower than you normally do. Feeling the rise and fall of your chest. And if you can, sort of counting in for that 5 and out for that 5, it's kind of like oars flowing through water when you row. It's a slow, steady movement, no pausing. Just a smooth in for 5 and smooth out for 5 through the center. And just imagine that you're breathing in and out through this heart center now where your hand is placed. And let's just take a moment to rejuvenate, activate a positive, replenishing emotion like gratitude. And perhaps let's take a moment to feel really grateful for your heart. So your heart beats 100,000 times a day without you even having to think about it. It pumps blood around 60,000 miles of blood vessels in your entire body. Now, if we were to take that and wrap it around the equator, it would go around the world twice.
Wow.
And that's all within you right now, giving you life. You didn't have to do anything to earn this heart. It was a gift and it was given to you. And as long as it beats, you live. Perhaps finally, we'll just feel grateful for something or someone in your life right now. Could be a pet, could be even a place, a memory, a lovely cup of tea that you had this morning, a moment to yourself, something you're really grateful for in your life. Could be anything. Just bring that into your heart, that person, that place, that thing, that moment, and just feel it through your heart. Connect to it. And just bask in that and allow it to infuse through you as you breathe in and out through the center. And just knowing that every time you do this, you're activating up to 13,000 chemicals in your body which heal and regenerate you. Bring order and coherence in the body just by the power of you and your heart alone. So perhaps allow yourself to smile at that, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back to the room. And yeah, it's as simple as that. So how did you find that, Fiona? I know you, Fiona, by the way, has brilliant heart coherence. Pro.
I love it because it obviously I know what oxytocin feels like. So I know as soon as plus just talking to you, I produce oxytocin anyway, because we meditate every Monday. But yeah, I get that really just, I don't know, it's the honeymoon feeling that I get doing that. It's very strong. And interestingly, it always feels like my heart, we talk about the heart swelling. I always get that sensation that my heart has enlarged.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's so beautiful and enriching. And just to mention that when I first started doing this, because I hadn't ever tuned into my body. And so it felt weird. It felt uncomfortable. So I just want to say, for people who are doing this, who's like, I can't feel anything, or maybe even it's painful. I've had that too. So yeah. It's just because, it's just like anything. When we first do anything, when we first learn to drive, it feels uncomfortable and awkward. If we first learn to start lifting weights, it can hurt and feel awkward. It's exactly the same thing. So any change is good. So if you experience anything, it's good. And just by doing it, you're creating a shift, even if you don't feel it yet. And as you continue these practices that Fiona and I have been doing for years, just takes, milliseconds, and you're there and you can feel it. And so just by sticking with it, just by doing it, you will be in training a new physiology into you. So I just wanted to mention that, because sometimes people can find that.
Yeah, no, and you're right. I have heard people say that it hurts. And I think that's that heart expansion thing. If you've had and like you said before, it's all these ancient wisdoms and terminologies that we throw around all the time, like his heart's closed, or she's got a closed heart, and then you start to do this and you haven't expanded your heart before. And I think there is actually some biological process that happens when you do this. The heart actually does expand, doesn't it? There's whatever chemical causes that
engorgement of the blood vessels, just like you mentioned, so that nitric oxide that you release, in that process, particularly when you breathe through your nose, that releases more nitric oxide. So doing this mouth closed is helpful, but it produces that engorgement, that dilation of the blood vessels, and you can feel it. And yeah, absolutely. And so if your heart's been always constricted, then it can feel a bit uncomfortable, but it's just like opening up a petal by petal. It just takes a process until it's fully in bloom. So yeah.
And I love it. And Carla said her and I do this all the time. And it is, if I'm ever stressed or whatever, and I get in, I'm quite now addicted to the sensation of my heart expanding. I just love it. And then the oxytocin rush, I call it, that I get as well, which is great. And that's the exercise you're talking about for 5 to 20 minutes twice a day. It's just connecting to your heart. So you do the first one hand over your heart and over your abdomen, and just regulating the 5 in, 5 out. And then you could maybe just slowly move then into just connecting to your heart with the 5 in, 5 out, and then feeling that gratitude for maybe your partner, or if you've got a dog or grandchildren or whatever it is, or a place that you love to go and sit, or something that just brings around that elevated emotion of whatever that is. And then you would just keep going and doing that. That's what people need to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really just a 3-step process of tuning in to your body. First of all, just bring your awareness to your body and your breath. placing my abdomen, placing your hand on the abdomen can just descend it a little bit more, because often we're just so here. So it just brings that expansion into you. And that's, as you say, that just first piece, bring your awareness. And then you can bring that regularity to breath, that 5 in, 5 out. That's kind of the second step, breathing in and out through your heart center. And then the third step is that emotion, that layering in of a positive emotion, and you know, seeing what you saw, feeling what you felt, hearing what you heard. If you can make those colors brighter, or really return to it, or really feel it more, you're literally dialing up the dose of that oxytocin just by feeling it. And it's a practice. So yeah, it's as simple as that sort of 1, 2, 3 process. And I know Heart Math Institute, you know, and Heart Math, if you just Google them, you'll be able to find, you know, resources and practices that guide you through those steps too, if you wanted to do more of that sort of heart focused breathing or heart coherence practices as well.
Amazing. And so obviously with heart math and things, and something that one of the tools that I used initially to know if I was in heart coherence is the heart math ear probe that goes on there, and it checks your heart rate variability and things like that. And you can then, it's got the timer in the app that you can breathe in and out to and all of those things. Do you think for people that are just getting started, having something that physical feedback is useful?
Yeah, I do. So it's just this is just a simple one, the inner balance.
It.
Yeah, so it's just a live device that you just connect to your phone, and so how it's biofeedback means that it gives you like real-time feedback. So this, like, heart rate variability devices are great, but I can only look at that after it's happened, like retrospectively. But where the biofeedback is really helpful is that, you know, particularly when I first started these practices, and many of my clients, like, we don't know often how stressed we are. That's normal. We think that that's normal. It's not until we put something on our body that actually is, you know, looking under the hood of us and gives us real time kind of insight into how our physiology is functioning, we can say, oh, and that's how I found it. Like, oh wow, I thought I was okay, but actually I'm actually quite incoherent at the moment. And that's fine, by the way, because there's an easy way to navigate out of it. And so yeah, definitely in the beginning, just to guide you, just to know where you're at, to then get a feeling of, oh, now I'm coherent. Oh yeah, the device says I'm coherent. This is what it feels like. Okay, remember this feeling. I know what this feels like. And over time, you know, some people want to stay with the devices. They love all the kind of geeky elements of it, and they want to know the numbers. That's fine. Some people are like, okay, I know how it feels now. It's something that I just return to when I'm feeling a bit off balance. And that's kind of me at the moment. Like, if I'm feeling a bit out of balance, I'll just check in and do some fine adjustments there. So it can really help for people who find technology helpful and are into that. But if you know, if you don't have the means for that, then just simply by doing it, by practicing it, you're doing it. You're having an effect on your physiology. So yeah, it can definitely be a good adjunct if you're into that. It's, yeah, I love it.
And you can just get them off the heartmath.com website, right? They're Inner Balance, they're called, aren't they?
Yeah, there's many devices, but yeah, that's probably the easiest one that you can get to.
And they're not horrendously expensive from memory either.
No, they don't. They often do deals, particularly around Christmas and things like that. So
we're heading towards very quickly, if you're watching this now live. Amazing. All right, Dr. Carla, what else do we need to talk about? Is there anything else in all of that you'd like to cover or say? What have we forgotten in all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think just to practice. I mean, I know we sort of discussed that we can meet another session maybe and kind of delve more deeply into the physiology of emotions and all that kind of stuff. But the most important thing I think is to know that you have the power to do this just by taking a precious few moments for you. And it could be 5 minutes twice a day. It could be 10 minutes once a day. It could be just start with 2 minutes, like just begin. That is the key. Just by beginning, you'll find that after sitting there for 2 minutes, you're like, oh, I feel better. Maybe I'll do a bit longer. So just by practicing, and I think it begins really with awareness, starting to become aware of your body and creating a relationship with it. And you know, it really does become a beautiful friendship, a relationship that you come back to, rather than having to go outside for reassurance. Then you can come to your heart, a space that's your home, to connect and get that kind of cuddle, you know, that oxytocin release, and we need it, and that nourishment to get you out of that stress response, to get you out of that challenge, and just to get you calm and clear on demand. Perhaps I'll mention as the last thing that, you know, we talked about that ascending information, 80% traffic up. we know that when there's an incoherent heart beating, when there's stress in the body, that influences your brain and it makes it incoherent. We get what is called like the kind of midbrain hijack, an emotional hijack, where you can't think clearly. And this is when we've all had it. We have brain freeze, or we lash out. Our behavior changes when we're stressed. And so when you can create coherence and get calm and clear on demand, that just means that if you're in a dilemma, or if you're stuck on something, you can get clarity on an issue, you can get more creative, your brain will function more coherently, and it just means that your whole day is so much more easy, rather than battling through and lashing, reacting. So, not only will it help you feel better, but it'll help your day be better, it'll help your brain function better, and help you interact and be more present and communicate better with people. So there's no like downsides to this whatsoever.
Doesn't sound like it.
I look forward to the days where like this is just standard practice, and that's why I'm so passionate about doctors knowing this stuff, because we can just infiltrate. If we were all working, like we start our day, go to work, we all do 5 minutes of this together, then we crack on, and maybe before a meeting, maybe before a challenging consultation, just imagine if this was integrated into our daily life, how different our day would all look, and if it was just normal.
Imagine if they were teaching like kids to do this from kindergarten onwards, like how amazing that would be. And just, before people lash out and things like that, just to connect and it'd be a very different world. Road rage may not exist.
Absolutely. I'm currently involved with another Aussie who's helping teachers bring this stuff to teachers. So if teachers can do it, then they can get their student, I think so it's coming, it's on its way, but but thank you so much for taking the time and for allowing me to share all this stuff today. And
thank you. And if people want to if there's doctors, we often have nephrologists and doctors watching, if they want to get in contact with you because they want to learn this stuff, how would they find you?
Just go to thewholemd.com. So that's where you'll find me, and just reach out to me and we'll connect. So
I'll make sure that I put your website in the show notes below so people can reach out and connect with you. Carla, thank you so much for your time today. And we will do another one where we'll dive a little bit deeper into the biology of emotion and get your whiteboard out, and we'll go through all of that. That would be amazing. But thank you again. And anyone watching, remember to hit like, make sure you give us a like. That helps all our YouTube algorithms and to appear to other people that might need to hear this. And remember to hit subscribe so you'll get notified anytime we produce more content. If you want to find out more about Kidney Coach and supplements Kaigenesis, head over to www.kidneycoach.com. If you've had amazing results using our program or any of the Kaigenesis stuff, then let us know, because Dr. Carla will reach out to you and connect with you. We're starting to get some really amazing video testimonials now that we're being a bit more proactive on that. And there's nothing greater in the world than evidence is the what is it that Dr. Joe says?
The loudest
what
voice.
Was that?
The loudest
voice.
Yeah.
Evidence is the loudest voice. And so the more that people share their stories, we get emails all the time. I know people are a bit more shy about getting in front of a camera, but that people's story really inspires other people, and that's really what we're all about. I know Carla and I share that mission, and it's just inspiring as many people, and to really help that the more empowered you become, the more dominion you have over your own health and your own world, then the better you'll feel. So thanks for being on the journey with me, sister. Love you lots.
Love you too. Thank you.
Thanks everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.